I am delighted today to welcome John Henny to the show. John has decades of experience helping thousands of voice users around the world become more effective communicators. He's a featured lecturer at top voice conferences and institutions, including IVTOM, Osborne Head and Neck Institute, VIP Worldwide Voice Conference, the Paul McCartney Liverpool Institute, and USC. John coaches professional voice users at corporate businesses, the US military, sports announcers, and voiceover artists. His cutting-edge methods help eliminate strain and bring out the best-sounding, compelling voice. He's an author of 3 Amazon bestseller books, hosts a popular podcast called The Intelligent Vocalist with over 50,000 downloads, and has 130 subscribers with 14 million views on YouTube. He is a seasoned online course creator with an extensive library of training courses for singers, speakers, and voice teachers. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
That's brilliant. Tell us a little bit more about yourself there, and then we can delve into this thing about voice.
Yeah, well, I took a very odd route to becoming a voice teacher. When I was young, I grew up in a very musical family. Both my parents were from Glasgow, Scotland, so I was constantly surrounded by music. Yeah. And my dad was a big, booming Glaswegian with this wonderful natural voice. And when I would attempt to sing, I would hear from the other room, "That's bloody terrible." So I, in his Scottish way. So I decided, you know what, I'll play drums. And I played drums throughout my teens, and in my late teens started making a living as a drummer. And on a lark, I had a friend who said, "Hey, I'm studying with this guy, and he studies with Stevie Wonder's voice teacher." And I thought, that's good enough for me. Let me see if I can finally learn to sing. And this person broke the voice down for me and just showed me the mechanics and how to make it work. And then I ended up studying with Stevie Wonder's teacher, a gentleman named Seth Riggs, who was teaching all the celebrities at the time. He's a pretty legendary vocal coach. And I began teaching other singers. I went, well, this works for me. Let me see if I can show others. And then I also started teaching other voice coaches, which is something I do quite a bit. And I will tour and do master classes. And now I was primarily in the Los Angeles area. And once COVID hit, I thought, let me try and make a move since everything was going online. So I moved further south and lived by the beach in a little town called San Clemente, which was made famous as Richard Nixon's residence when he was in the White House and after.
Right. And
I've got 5 English bulldogs, and that's where I am today.
Brilliant. That sounds a really fascinating way to get into these kind of things. It always strikes me with a lot of people how in lots of roles we end up as accidental something or others, and a lot of my project management colleagues have ended up as accidental project managers and accidental managers, because you kind of get there. And this one is kind of quite a circular route. So was your goal to be a singer then when you first started? Was that what you wanted to be when you were a kid? What did you want to do?
When I was a kid, my earliest musical memory was my dad had this is how long ago, a reel-to-reel tape recorder. I don't know why he had this. And he had the Beatles' Help on this. And it was the UK release, not the US. So it had more of the movie score in it. But I just remember hearing Paul McCartney's voice on the night before. I was maybe 4 years old, and I was absolutely transfixed. And so the voice just really captured something for me. And even when I was playing drums, this wish of wanting to sing never really left me. And I think it is for a lot of people. I think a lot of us secretly desire to sing. And it's something that's actually very primal. When they look at language and they try and figure out what came first. Did we sing first? Did we talk first? there's this idea that our first communications were this kind of musical language that was primarily expressing emotion. And then we later learned to have actual speech, and we could get a little bit deeper into concepts and conversation. But this musical, emotional core still exists within all of us. And I think when you rediscover that and reconnect to that, and not that you have to be a singer, but if you bring this back into your voice, you're going to be a more effective communicator.
Yeah, I suppose it's about bringing. I suppose with singing, it's never monotone, is it? You never get that. Oh, maybe some people do, but the point of the singing isn't to have a monotone there, is it? It's to have that light and that shade within it, and that's where. And I notice when I've watched speakers who transfixed me, and one of the guys who I absolutely love just listening to him talk is a guy called Brian Blessed. I'm not sure if you heard it. He played the Vulcan in not the Vulcan, the I can't remember the character's name there. He was in Flash Gordon anyway. In the version of the film in the 80s.
Oh yeah, it was Sam Neill, yeah.
With the the guy with the big beard who played the one with the wings, yeah. Yep. So he Brian, he's British actor, and he is booming voice, one of that huge booming voice. He was in loads of things, and I heard him on a podcast called The Infinite Monkey Cage, and he's this loud, just voice all the time, deep, resonant voice, and that's what you know him as. And they were talking about space, passionate about space and about space travel and climbing the mountains and all manner of things. And on this one, they were talking about the moon. And the end of it, they had him read Kennedy's speech about going to the moon. Mm-hmm. And you kind of think, well, that's not going to work. It's big booming voice, big shouting. But it completely was the opposite in the way that he read it. And he's a Shakespearean actor, obviously got that control, but just knowing his voice and knowing the power that was there in the background that he wasn't using seemed to make it even more impactful than if he used his big booming voice. And he rose and fell with it. And it sent tingles down my neck listening to it. And I just found it amazing. It's someone who could Ian McKellen's another one of the British actors that you could just kind of doesn't matter what they're saying, what they're reading. The way they read it, you just become transfixed by it.
Absolutely. And you bring a really important point where you talk about these different shades and these contrasts. And that's what I found with great singers, because popular music today, there's lots of repetition. We'll have verses, we'll go to the chorus, it's the same lyrics often on the chorus. And singers, as well as musicians and producers, know that they need to introduce new elements every time that is heard, so that it doesn't become rote and too predictable. And these contrasts, these musical devices are so incredibly effective, not just in singing, but also in speaking. And you'll hear great singers, they'll build up to a point, they'll start to use volume, they'll start to increase the tempo, and then they'll pull back, they'll change the tone of the voice. And it's these expectations. It's said that great music is a wonderful combination of the familiar and the unfamiliar. Because if everything's too unfamiliar, you could joke it sounds like jazz. I love jazz, but it becomes a bit overwhelming. And in speech, if there's too much contrast, you can sound a little unhinged. But if a speaker falls into predictable patterns, we tune out almost immediately. It's like listening to Three Blind Mice over and over. Yeah. So learning to bring these contrasts and these different shadings into your voice is highly effective.
Oh, that's brilliant. So something I didn't say before when you were saying about a drummer, you being a drummer and wanting to be a singer. My wife was a drummer. She now plays piano. She wanted to be a singer. One of my mates is a drummer. He always wanted. Just about every drummer I know wants to be a front man. So there you go. I think it's a common trait, isn't it?
Quite possibly.
You always get the drummer coming up at some point singing a song with an acoustic guitar. And I
Yeah.
think people like, yeah, just like people like Dave Grohl, he couldn't stay there and things like that. He had to come to the front.
Yeah.
And the
Phil
Foo Fighters.
Collins. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
There's
all
a
of them.
few of them.
So you obviously you got into that learning how to sing. Kind of how did that come to did your career go from improving and working with the coach Steve Wonder's coach, was that to teach you to sing? How did that when did you kind of get to the point where, like we're talking, where maybe you public speakers and sort of business type people, how did that happen? How did that crossover happen?
Again, that happened somewhat by accident. I was sent, one of my first clients was an attorney, a trial attorney who was having some serious issues with his voice. And I was connected to a number of ear, nose, and throat doctors in the LA area, and they would send me clients that were having vocal trouble to work through technical issues. And this person came and he was having some real anxiety with his voice. He was struggling to have people hear him. He was losing his voice quite often. His voice felt increasingly weak. And it was not only impacting his career, but also his personal life. He felt even in social situations, he was becoming more withdrawn. And so I began to take these singing exercises that I knew worked for singers and just modify them and essentially simplify them to work for the speaking range. And it didn't take that long to get some pretty dramatic results. And as a matter of fact, I remember on the last session, he wrote me a check for 10 times my rate in order to thank me. And I went, maybe I need to work with more speakers. And he was able to go, he had a party just that weekend, and he was able to converse freely and people could hear him, and he was just ecstatic about the results that he got. And then I began to work with other people such as voiceover artists, actors, stage actors, so they could be better heard without being mic'd. And I found it fascinating. I loved working with a group of people who really hadn't considered their voice before. And it was fun just watching them discover this instrument that they hadn't paid attention to and took for granted.
That's fascinating. Just the thought that you've got. I never thought about it was something. It would have been a root of people who were struggling with their voice. Well, I was always thinking it was going to be someone who's like I want to be Tony Robbins. Can you come and talk to me, teach me how to speak like Tony Robbins, kind of things? But it's kind of much more fundamental than that kind of thing that you got there. And then you mentioned the ear, nose, and throat scenario. Was that people who had illnesses and operations and things like that kind of recuperation and things like that? Is that where that was where you were working with those people?
Yeah, very often people who are extreme voice users, singers, they can have vocal injuries, they can have chronic vocal issues. The voice, if your vocal folds, your vocal cords, they're opening and closing hundreds of times a second. And in some very high singers, it's 1,000 times a second or more. And if this is not done in a really efficient way, if you're overpressing these vocal cords, if they're coming together too hard, you can start to have tissue injuries, and they can show up as polyps. Those are kind of like fluid-filled blisters, or you can get nodules that are like calluses on your hands. If you've ever tried to learn to play guitar, your fingertips hurt at first, and then they stop hurting because you develop calluses. That's the body's reaction to the irritation. Well, these calluses on your vocal cords are not good because they inhibit the vocal cords from closing fully so that you start to sound raspy and weak. So it was very often singers that were experiencing those issues, I would work with them to help improve their technique.
Oh, right. I was this Shania Twain recently. She was on some stuff in the UK, and she'd had some vocal problems, and her voice has actually changed quite not massively, but it has changed over the years. Is that something that's common with singers who are performing a lot and things like that? That the voice does change.
Yeah, well, the voice is going to change throughout your lifetime, and there is aging, and aging is going to show up on your voice as it does the rest of the body. The voice can start to lose strength.
Mhm.
You can actually experience bowing as the vocal folds get weaker. There's a loss of elasticity. There are different medical issues that can show up in the voice. I myself, I will share. I had made a huge life change. I had gotten pretty overweight and made a radical change in my diet and lost a massive amount of weight in a short period of time, which was great for my health, but it affected my voice in a rather adverse way. In retrospect, I probably lost the weight a little too quickly. And I started to experience vocal weakness. And then I then started to experience these little spasms in my voice and these tremors. And so I finally went to a speech language pathologist and discovered that I had benign essential vocal tremor, which is a misfiring of the nerve impulses to the muscles of the voice. And you can get this quavering in the voice. And I then underwent extensive therapy with my voice. And I'll tell you, it's one of the best things that ever happened to me, because it really, even all the work I'd done in the voice, I'd never done anything this painstaking. And just the exercises and the depth of work that I had to do, I really tried to take the stoic approach of this was a test from the vocal gods. And so I was to learn from this, because my first impulse was to just cry, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is the last thing I need as a voice coach. But we all experience challenges, and singers, we all will age differently. Even parts of our body will age differently. Some parts maybe a little faster than others. And we also have a genetic component where some voices can withstand a little more stress or even abuse than other voices. So it's really important to be in touch with your voice and always be monitoring your vocal health and just be aware of your voice. And if you feel that something is not right, to seek out a medical professional.
Brilliant, yeah. No, it's something I don't never really thought about. You see, as I say, you see people in the public eye who've lost their voice from singing, and I've seen a few instances of people like that, and you never think about it as being just something that can happen to, in quotes, a normal person, and it kind of it opens your eyes up to that a little bit, and again, it's kind of, yeah, when you're with you taking that on, as you say, it's kind of you're going to teach people to self rehabilitate, because I'm guessing a lot of that activity is something that's self driven.
It
And it's
is.
kind of right. You do what you're teaching and see how you get on. Kind of get someone said to you, haven't they? Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And depending on what you do for work, you may be using your voice far more than you realize. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're sitting coding all day, yeah, you're not an extreme voice user. But a school teacher, the average school teacher, their vocal cords are opening and closing upwards of 1 million times a day.
Wow.
So if you're not properly rested, if you're not generally healthy, if you're not eating a healthy diet, if you're not well hydrated, these million events can be more stressful than they need be. And the wear and tear on your voice is going to be more than necessary.
Again, that shocks me, and I never think about it. And I think in my role and in people who do a similar role, we spend a lot of time in meetings.
Yeah,
We spend a lot of time not necessarily leading all those meetings, but certainly contributing as the project manager. And I wonder how much damage or how much we speak in that scenario. There will be a lot of email as well, obviously. But it does make you think. There is that thing where, would that damage happen? Could that damage happen? And it's something I wouldn't even think about my career doing it. And then I chuck another extra hour a week doing a podcast interview with someone.
Yeah. It's not something I want people to be overly worried about. It's you're not necessarily going to get these nodules or these polyps or other vocal issues. It certainly doesn't happen overnight. But what you may be experiencing is vocal fatigue. Your voice just feels tired. You may have excessive throat clearing. Your voice starts to lose energy. And when your voice loses energy, you're less impactful as a speaker. When you're communicating, there is an objective behind this communication. You're trying to achieve something. You're usually not talking, certainly in a work environment, you're not talking for talking's sake. And if you're not using your voice to the best of its ability, you're possibly not being heard. Your communications aren't being received in the way that you intend. And the voice, as they've done the research, when we look back and we think, okay, possibly our very first utterings was this musical, emotional language, the voice is still the primary communicator of emotion and emotional intent. They did a study out of Yale where they took over, I think it was 1,700 participants. And the idea was, as these participants talked to each other, they were to see if they could understand what the other person was feeling emotionally. And they tried it with both seeing and hearing the person. Then they just seeing the person. They removed sound to see if body language and what it could impart. And then it was voice only. They either turned out the lights or put some type of obstruction between them.
Yeah.
And it was when it was voice only that the understanding accuracy went up. The voice is such a primary communicator, and most decisions are emotional decisions. We'll go back and employ rationality to justify a decision, but those quick decisions, those are emotional decisions. And if you're connecting with people on that emotional level, you're going to be able to get things done more efficiently.
Yeah, that makes sense. It kind of it's all about that selling of a lot of the time. I think and people don't like the thought of being a salesman in the office, but actually you're a salesman all the way through your life, in my view. You're influencing people, whether it's to get your friends to come and do something, find a partner, get a job, persuade your boss to give you a pay rise, persuade someone else to help you with the project. All those things, all of that is a sales pitch, but it's gentler than the car salesman, the stereotypical car salesman kind of pitch. But as you said, that when you influence people, and it's all about influencing, and that's what communication's for. Your communication to influence in one way or the other. Sometimes it might be to influence them to do something you want, or it might be to influence them to support someone and make them feel better. But it's about influence, and it's about connecting, isn't it? And that connection of that, the thing in our voices is that it expresses emotion without us thinking about expressing the emotion. And that's where it's like that mirroring, where people in body language, where you unconsciously mirror someone's body language because you are connecting with them. It's like kind of same with the voice, isn't it? You get that same sort of, if someone's, you pick up on those signals without knowing you're picking up on them.
Absolutely. I mean, we are all amazingly good judges of actors. I don't have to know how to act or be very sophisticated in the art of filmmaking to be able to spot poor acting, because we are social beings, and we are wired to pick up emotions from other people. It's critical to our survival, going back to our earliest days, to know if somebody can be trusted, to know if somebody means is good or ill. And it continues today. People are always listening on a deeper level, even if they don't realize they are. And I think, yes, sales, that term salesperson can get a bad reputation because that can often be insincere and pushy. But when you are sincere, when you have honest emotional intentions, when you are truly being collaborative and helpful for people, they will perceive those honest emotions in the voice. And then when you just work the voice a little bit to just have some musicality to it, so that it's not this dull voice that's just doing rote patterns, or even worse, people will just speak at too low of a pitch and then it's just very hard to hear them. And you're like straining, wait, what? It's the worst in a busy restaurant. And you have somebody that just kind of talks like this, and you find yourself kind of nodding and smiling to everything they say. You have no idea what you're agreeing with because you can't hear them, because the voice needs this full spectrum of frequencies that we produce. And that really starts coming into this realm of resonance, which is incredibly important, which gives your voice its color, its tone, and your unique vocal fingerprint.
That's it. It's interesting that, because I have a slight hearing problem, just at high register. I can't hear those very well, and I do find I struggle with TVs and stuff like that. I end up having them really loud because of the speakers in the back. It's all been explained to me what the problem is. I need to spend a few $100s on a decent soundbar or a decent TV. One of the two. But it is not to the point where it causes me major issues. But I do notice that I struggle. I kind of struggle with some voices to be able to tune into them. And it tends to be, actually, it's interesting, it's those lower resolution resonance ones that I can hear. But I imagine it's what it is I'm not picking up on it, any high registers that they've got in there. So it's limiting the ability that I've got. If someone's got only a small amount of that musicality in there, then I probably struggle a bit more to hear it.
Yeah, usually in those situations, the ear, in order to find the person's voice above all the ambient noise, relies on these higher frequencies.
Yeah.
And so in your situation, it's a little more difficult for you because you have limited hearing in that range. And then if somebody is not filling out the rest of their voice, your voice is actually creating many pitches at the same time. And we hear these lower pitches as the pitch itself, and then the rest of the pitches is the color. And when you are not utilizing that in your voice, you are harder to hear. The more information, the fuller spectrum that you send out into the room, the more energy your voice is going to have, the easier you are to hear. And you don't have to work as hard. It's not a product of your vocal cords using muscle to try and create stronger sound waves. It really is the vocal tract, your throat and mouth, tuning these sound waves to an optimal state so that they're really resonant and vibrant.
Brilliant. So if I wanted to improve, and I suppose that's the thing, is if we are sitting there and thinking as a project manager, as a manager, as an employee, and if we find it difficult to be heard in a meeting, if we find it difficult to get into the conversation when there's some of that's going to be, you've got the loud gobby ones that won't shut up, but sometimes I'm holding my hand up there, but sometimes it's a case of being. It isn't so much that, it's just that projection that for people, not for any negative reason, just don't notice what you're saying or don't tune into it and hear it. What would you say, and giving away all the tips and tricks and that, unless you have some tips on your website anyway, but what would you say if you, as project manager, what would a couple of things that you would say, think about doing this?
The first one and the most common is finding your optimal speaking pitch. Very often we associate, and there's truth to this, we will associate what we perceive as deeper voices as having more authority. But we make the mistake of thinking that deeper means lower in pitch. And we'll find people that, they're speaking down here, and so the voice is rather low. That doesn't have a lot of energy. Low frequencies don't travel as fast or have as much energy as higher frequencies. And so I can say something on one pitch. I can be speaking here, and then I can make my vocal tract just bring out the high frequencies. Now I haven't changed the pitch, but now I drop my vocal tract, and suddenly I have a richer, more resonant voice. It's on the same pitch. I'm just bringing out more resonance. So it's finding where your natural pitch lies. A quick way to do that is just go like you're agreeing with something. Say, mm-hmm. Try that for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You inflect up on that second pitch. So I want you to take that second pitch and just feel that for a moment. Mm-hmm. Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
There you go. And you'll feel a spot where it tends to get really, really buzzy. You'll kind of feel it in your lips and your nose. There it is for me. Right there. Try that.
Yeah, I got
There
it.
it is. There. Yeah. Now, when you're in that really buzzy spot, then say something really positive. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that's okay.
There you go.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah, I can
and
hear
now
that myself.
Yeah, the voice now is going to be in the optimal place for you, and it's going to have more acoustic energy, and that acoustic energy is going to fill the room, and you're going to be much easier to be heard.
So how do you get into the habit of using that pitch? I'm trying to think of how to do it there as I'm talking to you there.
Yeah.
Sorry, that resonance level there. I get it kind of there. I can hear it when I said level then. To keep that going forward. And that, it's kind of, again, I'm thinking back to people who I've seen who are speakers who have grasped me. And there was a guy called Colin Turner, who's a British writer and thinker and sort of self-development books. And I remember watching him speak, and I just sat there and just like, you're just such a good orator. And I think about it now, and I think about that, what you just said there, and I can see where it was that resonance that was coming through that I kind of hear in my head as being a deep, manly, powerful voice. The Tony Robbins, again, I draw that because he just thinking about what you're saying there, you can hear that in his voice as well when he's speaking. How do you get yourself? That exercise we've got there is great, but how do you make yourself use that tool that we've obviously got?
It's a process of awareness and repetition. When I first started teaching voice and having a pretty heavy schedule, I would be vocally tired at the end of the day. And I realized it's not the singing, but it's the talking that's making me tired. And I went, you know what? I'm speaking at too low of a pitch. I'm working too hard. So what I did is it took me maybe a week or so, but every time before I would answer the phone, this was back when we actually answered our phones, before I picked up the phone, I would say, hello, this is John. And just doing that, just finding and resetting that optimal pitch doesn't take that long before it starts to become more habitual. And then you'll find when the voice starts to get tired, because when the voice is tired, the tendency is to want to drop the voice. And then now, in order to be heard, I'm going to start to use muscle and squeeze my voice, which is just going to fatigue the voice even more. So it really is just a matter of, especially if I'm tired, I need to remind myself to make sure I don't let my pitch drop. Let the resonance do the work.
That's brilliant. That's so kind of, I'm thinking practicality for me is I'm thinking there is, if I'm about to go onto a conference call, if I'm about to go into a meeting, as you say, if I'm about to do a call, or a presentation or something like that, is using that step just before. Does that kind of just? I suppose it's like anything, isn't it? The more you practice it, the more your brain go, oh, we're doing that now. Your brain does that and switches it on, doesn't it? But I suppose it is that thing of you just doing that a couple of times, and I guess you'll go in the session and you'll start like that, and maybe later on you'll forget partway through and drift, and then but over time does it develop up, and it is just practice.
It is. It's just that reminder, and what you said about doing it a few times before you go into the call, that will work wonders. Not only is it going to help your pitch, but it's going to help you just dial in to your vocal energy.
Yeah.
Not to get too metaphysical, but ultimately, so much of the universe is vibration. And as they look at string theory and all of these things, and the voice, all the voice is, what sound is it's vibrating air molecules. You're creating a system of lower and higher pressure that starts this oscillation with the opening and the closing of the vocal folds. And this vibration reaches the listener into the ear, to the inner ear, to the brain, where it's vibrating in the brain, and neurons start to vibrate. And this connection is incredibly powerful. If you infuse this with energy, and then you start utilizing clear emotional intention, certainly when the stakes are raised and it's an important conversation, you'll find that people will listen to you on a deeper level, and you can really connect with them. And it's a profound change.
Yeah, I can see how it can work. And again, I'm casting round about people who I know, who I work with, and who I empathize with and connect with for no real reason. and it'll be these people who are able, and where I've seen people not do it, and I've really been sat back and gone, I'm uncomfortable. There was something uncomfortable, and I didn't trust what was being said. I kind of sat there going, yeah, there's nothing there. And it's really, really interesting that that connection point there of having that energy to make that connection, how that again will help that empathy, and how I can see that those relationships get built better, and you can see how it's easier for someone in that situation who you might perceive as being, I don't know, maybe it's just me. You just look at that person, how are they so easy to get on with, and people get on really well with that person, and actually you realise it's that kind of thing, and why people will follow those people because of the way that they speak. And don't get into politics, but a lot of the political leaders who get big followings, I'm guessing they've got people like you teaching them to do these sort of things, and that's where you get that empathy and that connection, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at politics, this connection with the voice is so important that on the dark side of this, I will joke, but it's actually not really a joke, that you won't find a cult leader or a con artist with a poor speaking voice. They have great speaking voices. They have energy. They know how to use the voice, in this case, to manipulate people for not such great goals. But you can use this and not in a nefarious way, and not in a dishonest way. This is a way for you to take what is important, these things that you know can help people, can help the business, and to get people to really listen to what you have to say and understand what you have to say.
Yeah, that's great. It's brilliant. Yeah, it all brings us back around to that influence thing, isn't it? And influence can be used positively or negatively. At the end of the day, it's kind of, but that's how it kind of works. One of the things I was thinking, health-wise, because you mentioned that you lost a lot of weight, you're trying to get healthy and stuff, and you had some problems. There are a lot of project managers and a lot of managers in middle management that struggle with health and lifestyle issues. It's kind of a cliche, isn't it? Oh, cliches are usually pretty much true. And you've got someone who's poor diet, under hydrated, maybe recreational cigarettes and alcohol or other things. If people are in that situation where they have essentially a rundown body and they're not treating and all of those things I mentioned there don't treat your vocal cords very well, is there some things that you would say to someone, well, actually, if you want to, in order to best put us in the best physical condition to be able to maximize on this voice, some behaviors, some habits that you would recommend or that you teach?
Well, it would be no secret that smoking is not a good idea. Alcohol can also be hard for the voice. One of the issues that people have when they drink, and when I used to drink, this was certainly the case, and then I'd want to eat afterwards, and I'd go to sleep with a belly full of alcohol and food, and there is a muscle that needs to stay tightened so that this stomach acid or this pepsin doesn't come up and travel up and the esophagus and burn your vocal folds, that you don't get this GERD or this acid reflux. And alcohol will relax this muscle and the digestion of all this food. So that, number one, dealing with reflux can be injurious to the voice. Just being properly hydrated. And if all you're subsisting on is coffee here or there and processed food, you're likely not properly hydrating the cords. Food and diet, the more water-rich foods you eat, the better. Fruits and vegetables, processed foods, the more they learn about them, the worse they really are. I mean, that's one of the most insidious exports of America, is our standard American diet is really just starting to spread health issues around the globe. And so getting back to a more natural diet, it affects your microbiome. These foods, they're even seeing now in terms of your cognitive abilities, they can have adverse effects, not just on the vocal folds. And also, and I know this is hard, but making sleep a priority. Because this is when the body is able to heal tissue and take care of itself. And the voice needs rest. So learning to put down the electric devices, allow the brain to become more calm, and getting to bed when you can and getting as much sleep as possible.
Yeah, so it's I was thinking that it would probably be the standard sort of thing of what would help,
yeah.
but again, people don't always connect those good behaviours with something like this. There might be people think, right, I need to go and get a vocal coach, and I need to kind of get someone to teach me how to do this. I need to do all I do. I need to do all vocal exercise beforehand before I go out and do some speaking or go and do a presentation. And actually, whilst that I guess would help, if you haven't got those fundamentals in place, or you're at the extreme end of them being bad, you're kind of throwing bad money after good, isn't it? Good money after bad, even. So, and because you're just not going to get. I remember seeing it's an interesting one about a motorcycle magazine that I was reading years ago now, and they did a test where they were going around Brands Hatch, I think it was, in the UK, and they had whatever motorcycle it was, and all the trick bits you could get on it. You could put carbon fibre on it, you put a new exhaust, you do this, do that, and all the different things. So they had a pro rider, and they would do one of the things driving around, right, 0.2 of a second, do that, 6, whatever. They did it over and over, and they did over everything that you could trick your bike with. And I can't remember what they did. And then they said, actually, the power to weight gain that you could get from all these different things, even combined, was nowhere near what you could get if you lost half a stone from the rider. And it's kind of like, you spend 30 grand on pimping a bike, actually, or you could spend a few days in the gym and drop a few burgers or whatever. And that was the thing, is like when you've got, there's someone out there going out and buying a bit for their bike because they want it to be a little bit more responsive. And I see the same sort of thing. You kind of want, if you want to go out and do these training, do that thing, which they can help, there's bigger benefits in many ways. Once you find it, there's a load of benefits there to do those other things as well first.
If you get healthy and just take care of yourself reasonably well, and just have an awareness of your voice, the basic things you need to do to keep your voice healthy as well, find your optimal speaking pitch, learn how to use resonance to power the voice, it's going to go a long way to helping your voice last. Very often, these things that we do when we're younger, we don't really see the cost, right? We can stay out late, we can eat poorly, we can drink, not take care of ourselves. We get up, we still look pretty good. We may not feel great, but as we age, that's when the bill comes due. And you're going to want your voice to last your lifetime. In most cases, unless there's some extreme illness, your voice is meant to last you. And if you just take some basic care of it, it will.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So I think we're coming up on an hour nearly on our chatting, I think, from what I can see. And I think we could literally talk. It's 45 minutes or so. We could talk for a long, long time. But then it'll wear out our voice and stuff. Just thinking about there's obviously, we haven't talked about, you've got your course and you've got books and things like that. What sort of things that you do on your online courses, and what sort of things do you do while your book's covering? And I know you've got one coming out later in the year as well, haven't you?
Yeah. What I cover is really going through these musical devices in order to start working them in to your voice and start to have this awareness and play with different aspects, play with different volumes, tone, melody, and then, which I think is incredibly important, exercises in which to employ these emotional intentions. A typical one is, let's say that you've got to run someone or a group through some new software, or you're giving a rather dry PowerPoint presentation. It's very easy to just, as they say, death by 1,000 slides, you just fall into this rote speech. But if you have a very clear emotional intention of, I want to blank, I want to inform, I want to educate, I want to inspire. When that's what's driving you, that is going to fuel the voice with an emotional core. And that is going to be picked up by the people that are in the room. And so I go through exercises to kind of break things down, find emotional intentions, different ways to work them, and get used to communicating in this deeper way.
I love that thought there of having that clear view, like from a clear point of view of why we're in this meeting is something we should be doing anyway. Why are we having this conversation? Because if we don't consider that, but I think sometimes we don't. But I think that having that view of the emotional intent of that meeting as well is really good, because that'll change the way that you engage, regardless of the voice as well. It'll be, as you say, I'm assuming it, by thinking about the fact that you want to empathize with these people, or thinking about the fact that you want to help someone in that room, or you want to make it easier, or you just convince them or influence them, immediately changes. Our brains will, I'm guessing, take on the role there and go, right, here's a little bit of seeding of what you need to do, and change the way that we talk.
Yeah, this comes from the world of acting. An actor, if they have a scene where the character is receiving horrible news, they're not going to think, okay, I'm just going to be upset, because that's just an emotion. they need something deliberate. They need this goal. So what the character, the intention may be, is they're going to want to defy this news, to rebuke this news. And so that, as they're being told this terrible news and they want to defy, no, this isn't true, that starts to create the emotional context. And then this sense of rage and anguish is natural, and it starts to come out in their voice rather than a manufactured emotion. When people come out, let's say they have to give a public talk or start a meeting, they'll very often just say, hello, my name is John. It's very nice to meet you. But it's just this formality they're getting out of the way. What if my intention was to greet or to welcome? And I really feel that intention. Then I may walk out and say, hello, my name is John. It's great to be here. I may pause. I may have a different energy. My eyes are going to have a different look, a different focus. And all of these things are being picked up on.
Yeah, that's brilliant. It reminds you, what you said there reminds me. Last year I saw a presentation, or a link to a presentation that was sent on. There's a guy doing a TED talk, and I can't remember his name, but it was a TED talk about nothing. Was the talk? And do you know the one I mean? I don't know if you've seen it.
The comedy bit where he's doing the spoof of TED Talks.
Yeah, and he takes off his glasses, and he's I don't wear glasses. Yeah, but he's enthralling to watch, and the way that he pauses, the way that he does the different things, just as you were doing there, it was that same thing of stop, let the words sink in, then move on with that sincerity and I can see, and I know that with the TED Talk there's a lot of coaching. I imagine a lot of the vocal coaching that you do, similar sort of stuff for the guys who do the TED Talks, that would get that kind of support to do that, because they are I've not seen a single one that isn't compelling, regardless of the topic. I think it's very rare that if you watch one, that you don't want to watch it to the end. They keep you, they hook you.
Yeah, and so, I mean, TED Talks are a very specific style, and it's not that I want everyone, when they're leading a meeting or public speaking, that they fall into kind of this TED Talk style. I think that everybody has their own personality, their own way of explaining things, their own way of resonating with people. And I'm a big believer in truth and sincerity. I don't want people putting on falsities with their voice or going into some amped up performance. I want it to really be organic and a reflection of who they are. But if they work these tools just like great singers, there are devices that singers know they can use that just captivate people. And they're always in the business of reawakening interest. Our attention spans are probably the shortest they've ever been in recent times. And we're always dealing with these wandering attention spans. And so, if you're at a point of the talk and maybe it's getting slightly dry and you see people start to shift in their seats and look around, you can do a pattern interrupt. You can change what you're saying. I just sped up, I increased the volume, and that kind of snaps them back to awareness. And so it's also not ignoring your audience. It's feeling their energy back to you as well, and staying engaged in that and staying attentive to that.
Yeah, that's really key as well, because I do think sometimes, and I've seen it, I'm guilty of doing it myself, trying to charge through my slides, trying to charge through my presentation and just get it done, and not think, right, is that message landing? I've learned over years to kind of recheck, especially on some of the ones where it's been where I'm not making a specific thing. I've just got sorry, my brain's going off down another rabbit hole now, where it's not No, it's gone. It's completely gone. Yeah, I'm having one of those brain fart moments.
That's all right. I have those more and more these days.
Yeah, it's distracting to kind of get in that, and you get in the flow, and you think, "Hang on, where did that go?" Because I was thinking, your brain's thinking about the next bit that you're going to say, and I suppose that happens in
Yeah.
presentations as well. Like happens in those conversations where you end up going beyond where you're thinking about, and you're thinking about the next bit that you're going to put in, and you're not thinking about what's landing, and you can. It's easy to get caught up in what you're in yourself, and actually the whole point of that thing isn't about you. It's about the people out there that are listening to what you're saying, whether it's 2 people or 200 people, or a stadium full of music fans being sung to. If that person isn't connecting with them, it isn't. It's no point doing it, is there?
That's true. And this making it about the others and not about yourself is so vitally important. And if someone comes to me and they're dealing with stress about public speaking, stage fright, there is a certain amount of that is natural. And that little bit of anxiety can kind of get you worked up and ready.
Yeah.
But you don't want it to become debilitating. And I tell people in that circumstance that that's you turning inward, right? You're worried about what others are going to think. You're worried about rejection. And these are primal fears from way back. But what I do when I feel that, I just stop and remind myself, look, I'm not here for me. I am here for those who've taken time, whether voluntarily or not, but they're here to listen to me. It's about them. I need to put my energy and focus outward. And then I always say to myself, I give you permission to not like me, because not everyone's going to like you. It's out of your control. Give them that permission. Let it go, and then go and be there for the people that need to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. And actually, even if they don't like you, it doesn't really matter. If the information that is useful to them and it lands and they use it, even if they didn't like you doing it, you still have achieved what you wanted to do.
Absolutely. Not everyone's going to like you. Trust me, the more I'm sure you putting out a podcast, the more you put yourself out there in the world, you find out there's people that don't like what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and that's right, because actually there's people who I don't like. So it's kind of, do you know what I mean? It's kind of like there's stuff that I don't like. So yeah, and I kind of, you kind of get to, I think it's funny. I listened to a number of marketing podcasts. Seth Godin's one of them, and he talks about that concept of so many fans, 10,000, 15,000 fans or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And the thing is that you just need to find your niche in some ways. And in that room, you kind of need to find that niche and get that message across to the majority of the people in the room. And then sometimes you might need someone else to get the rest of the room in and kind of go, right, can you go and talk to them separately and convince them as well and work together as a team? So yeah, I mentioned earlier that you've got a new book coming out sometime soon. Do you want to just give us a little taster into what that is? And I know it's not actually out this minute, so people won't be able to get hold of it, but I'm sure they'd be intrigued to know what it's about.
Yeah, so it's the title at the moment is The Compelling Speaker. And it really is just all of these concepts to help create an awareness of your voice, the power of your voice, some simple exercises you can do to start bringing more musicality into your voice and to be able to communicate better. And I've worked hard at not making it a long, rambling book. I wanted it to be on the shorter side because I know people are incredibly busy, and I wanted the information to be impactful. And I'm also going to have an area for people who get the book where I'll have some exercises online so they can hear examples, and I'll show them how to do the exercises.
Yeah, because I imagine it's quite with this topic, it's quite difficult to get it over with the like just that little exercise you showed me before. Getting that over in the written word is quite difficult. You do your audible versions, you've got a little bit where you can include that in there, can't you? But the written word ones kind of make it a little bit harder. So I can imagine.
And then once you hear it, I mean, I've kept the exercises really simple. I'm not trying to turn anyone into a singer. However, if you do the exercises, you might find your singing voice improving.
Yeah, cool. Well, we all could do with that, especially on karaoke night after a few beers.
Yeah.
Well, John, it's been fantastic to talk to you. I've got a few tips there just for me. So I've succeeded in my outcome. If everybody else gets something, that's going to be even better. If people want to continue on the conversation, if they want to get hold of you, what's the best place to go?
Yeah, my main website is John Henny, JohnHenny.com. And then my site for speakers is compellingspeaker.com.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, John, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
To you as well. Thank you.
Thanks, John.